All right, guys, lovely to see so many people just dropping in the space. We're just going to take a very quick second to make sure we get all the speakers on stage and we're going to kick things off. Just give us 1 minute and we'll begin. All right. I think this looks like almost everyone. I think we just want to I can see Kyle still waiting to come up. Kyle, if you just want to request to speak, we'll bring you up as speaker. But we have got a bit of a celebrity lineup today, guys. Very impressed. First and foremost, let's just hear from Ignacio. Ignacio, are you hearing me okay? Is your mic working? What's new?
Great to be here once again. I am indeed present. Hello to see everyone. Hello to all Bondex. Excited for our first session of the Web3 Career Intelligence Report.
What I'd love to do actually is I would love to actually hear from all the speakers. We'll go around just as I see them. But to kind of set the stage, what are we going to be going through today? Well, if you haven't seen it already, yesterday we released a pretty punchy report about the state of things in Web3, about the state of hiring specifically. And we did a heck of a lot of data wrangling. And we went for around about 80,000 jobs with around about 16,000 companies. And we analyzed almost 200,000 applications as well. And just a huge amount of data from Web3 Career and from Bondex. And what we really wanted to do was to create a report where if you are in this space and you're looking to take that next step in your career, whether you're brand new to Web3 or you're a bit of a seasoned pro, then we'd love to kind of give you some alpha as to maybe some trends to kind of keep an eye out for and a few ways you can maybe position yourself. A few things stood out for me when we were kind of creating the report. I created it along with Kyle and Junior, our kind of data wranglers who did a phenomenal job. And for me, I was really excited to see the future of kind of remote work kind of changing. I'm a big fan of in person. I love working alongside people, so I love seeing that. But I'd love to maybe just go around the room. I'll start with yourself, Ignacio. Maybe just a quick intro to. We've got a lot of new people here on the space. Quick intro to who you are, what Bondex do, and maybe just something and that you really appreciated from the report or something that kind of caught your attention.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Ignacio, the co-founder of Bondex, the leading Web3 professional network. We're revolutionizing verified digital reputations, an evolution from obsolete resumes and static LinkedIn profiles, a true passport for the future of work. And within this, one of the big asset purchases that we made in the last year has been Web3 Careers, the leading job board in the space, which has an incredible wealth of data, given that it's the most amount of traffic flow from both companies and candidates getting hired in the space in the industry for the last, I believe, 3 to 4 years. And it was incredible to see the report being put together and analyzing. One of the interesting parts that I found most interesting was the idea of the need for seniority. And I think that when you look at traditional startups and most corporates, they have a deeper bench of graduate programs that they want people that they can mold. And I think that we've been through many cycles, and nothing against anyone that's completely Web3 native, but I think that people are looking now because there's such a scarce supply of talent compared to other industries, because it's a newer industry. You have to look for people that already have a few years of experience, whether it's in traditional markets and industries or in Web3 itself, before you hire them so you can get the most out of them. So that was something interesting for me. We could also be playing into the AI advent in which maybe more junior roles are not needed. And if you're a senior, you can just do more, and maybe it leads to leaner startups and companies. So that was one of the interesting insights I found in the report.
Really good. Totally agree about that as well. This bias towards seniority that we kind of see across a lot of these listings. And I think the next person to be great then to bring up would be Vugar. Vugar, I know that obviously COO of Bitget and you obviously work with Blockchain for Youth. I think that kind of speaks to maybe the same topic here as well around the entry requirements for people coming into Web3 and how hard quite a lot of people find it. You're on the front ground with this with Blockchain for Youth. You're working in 50 universities around the world. I won't steal your thunder. I would love you to give yourself a quick intro, but also maybe some insights that you kind of enjoyed from the report as well. Blake, I'd love you to kind of do a quick introduction to yourself, into Myosin, and then we'll come back as well to Vugar.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Paul. And love to see a lot of familiar friends and faces in the room. Yeah, I'm Blake, co-founder of Myosin XYZ. We are the ultimate anti-agency marketing network. TLDR, we aggregate the best marketing talent from around the world, pull them into a DAO structure, and we provide agency services to some of the biggest blockchains, protocols, dApps out there. Yeah, there's some actually exciting news and updates coming in the next couple of months about our next evolution, but I'll keep that on the wraps. And I would love to give a shout out to actually Web3 Careers, because when we first started this thing 3 years ago, I actually ran a growth hack. Because when you start a DAO or any type of community, the question is, how do you find your best people. Right. And our thing is not anyone can just join. We were looking for the best talent out there. And I ran a little experiment across Web3 Careers, and I forget the other two, is like crypto job postings and one other. And Web3 Careers helped, just drove a lot of volume for us in terms of putting our names on the map so we could find our initial community. So shout out there.
Amazing. Come on, yeah. And we've also got an API as well people can use for if they're kind of wanting to vibe code something up or kind of flesh something out themselves. But like, I think I quoted you yesterday on the Web3 career site, basically because you have quite an alternative take on remote viewing. You're super bullish on remote work, not remote viewing, but you're super bullish on remote work. Would love to hear that take.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what I will say is this, is like, obviously, I'm not saying being in person is not valuable. I do think that's certainly a great thing. And that's partly why I've been nomading for a couple years. But at the same time, I think there's a massive benefit that remote work brings for the right type of person. I think at least at Mice, and we're always looking for members who bring initiative, people who lean in, because especially for us, our entire model is traditional agencies, their model is broken because as they scale, the partners want to extract maximum profits. They'll hire people and, you can get a salary, but they're going to squeeze you for MAV and they'll just hire freelancers who only get an hourly rate. So for us, the most important thing is, how do we find people who want to lean in, take initiative, and want to be part of something bigger so they can contribute and earn, ownership in this network that we're building together. And so because of that, it's been really helpful actually to kind of work with the global talent team, right? Because there are people who are really hungry for opportunities, and also crypto is global. So it's honestly been great for us because it allows us to expand globally very quickly, where we have hubs in New York, Lisbon, Seoul, Lagos, Tokyo, Mexico City, and Argentina. And so it's all possible because of remote work. And then thankfully, because of all these crypto conferences we're all traveling the world for anyways, we can meet members across the world and have team bonding sessions and offsites, really fun locations. It's about finding the go-getters, the people who lean in. And there's a lot of untapped gems, I think, outside of the New York bubble that I used to live in, and maybe the Lisbon bubble that I'll soon be entering, who knows? But there's a lot of great talent out there. You just got to know where to look.
Well, shout out to Lisbon. It's my favorite place in the world. That's why I live here. So can't wait to have you over, Blake. It's going to be great. Come on. Vugar, is your mic working? Vugar, there's a stat in this report. It said 75% or almost 75% job roles that are going out there right now are either senior or expert level. It's just a huge amount. I'd love you to maybe just speak into that from your position as COO of Bitget. But before you do, maybe just introduce yourself, what you're working on, and then I'd love you to kind of speak into that.
I'm Vugar. For people who don't know me, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Bitget. I run a team of 1,800 seasoned professionals across 65 nations. We are one huge team that runs truly 24/7. And when we talk about seniority, I think within our industry, we always mistake seniority to previous experience. Usually, when we talk about someone being senior, we look at someone who has some sort of a crypto experience, which can be misleading. While in traditional settings, seniority would refer to a person who can manage team or teams, and they have more managerial skill than the actual executional skill. While in crypto, we always look for executional skill with previous experience. And that's how, in my opinion, the seniority in crypto, Web3, blockchain is much different than your traditional settings. I come from a very, very traditional background. I served at Fortune 500 companies. I consulted at Bain, which is a very traditional institutions, and speakers already, and you also mentioned that in such kind of traditional settings, the institution itself becomes a talent producer, and they usually try to tap as early as possible into that particular talent market, hire people directly from universities, for example, and then eventually keep them growing to the senior levels. While in our industry, mainly what we refer is actually headhunting and going and trying to hire people from our competitors because they have certain experience, and trying to kind of a fast track because it's a very fast industry and it's a very young industry, and no one yet had the time kind of to invest so long to hire young people and then keep developing that talent. And with blockchain for use, actually this was our initial goal, because back in times when I was at Harvard, all these top companies will come and try to headhunt students before they even go hit the job market. And this was the idea that born, and we decided to invest $10 million in the next 5 years. We partnered with 70 universities globally, from UCLA to Harvard, from Oxford to many others, many big names, to kind of be able to source the top talent and young minds right from the university and make sure that entire industry benefits. Because if exchange keeps headhunting from another exchange, and game studio it keeps headhunting from another game studio, and no one invested in developing talent, that will be a huge problem. And especially when we talk about seniority and people who have people managing skills, it becomes next new level. Because one thing is you need a good software developer, which is all about skill, but another thing you need a team leader or CTO who doesn't only need to know how to technology work, but also has to have a managerial skills to manage the big teams. And this is one of the biggest challenges in our industry, and that's why the talent is so scarce. And that's why, as Blake already mentioned, I'm also very proponent of the remote work, because this is the only way we can, at today's employee market, we can tap into the top talent.
Actually, I'd love to double click on one thing there, Vugar, which is what do you obviously at the universities a lot, speak on a lot of students. There's a lot of people that want to get into Web3 and into this space. What would be some of the main blockers that you see from your side around that are blocking people actually being able to take their first steps into a career in Web3?
There are two distinguished patterns. Pattern number one is not everyone knows about Web3, especially if you are talking about top universities and top talent, because there's already huge and established competition. The second is job security. Unfortunately, because it's a very young market and because it's a very fast market, the job security isn't in there. And if you are in your early 20s, you just graduated, probably you want to build a long and sustainable career than just jumping into something very new or something very fragile. And lastly, it is about the compensation, the money, and all the benefits. If you have on the table, I don't know, from the day one, a $250,000 annual salary from Google, and we know that practice was there for so long that big tech companies will come and hire talent even if they don't need them, in order for competition not to be able to grab it. And while the big tech giants, $1 trillion companies fight for that talent, it's very unlikely for a small Web3 startup to be able to talent in that kind of a market for the top talent. Today we see the same pattern with AI and other developers. And this is one of the shortcomings, especially when we are becoming this like a very mature industry, where we do need people with PhDs from top universities to come and innovate rather than looking into the market. Because all the kind of a mid-level and below positions, they are easy to hire and they're easy to train on the need. But for top talent, for the smartest minds in the world, you really need to compete. And that is where things get tough. And that's why I think we see such a huge 75% kind of a demand or gap for the senior positions that almost all companies trying to hire and fill. And usually, if you zoom into, you will see that most of these positions will look for the top level lawyers who understand Web3 and blockchain. It will be, again, top level developers who know how to develop in AI and this kind of very niche industries. Even for HR marketing professionals, it will be very, very hard to compete in between, because at that level of the seniority, you don't just compete between Web3 companies, you compete between tech companies and FMCG and all Fortune 500, which makes it very, very hard to attract top talent.
If I may step in here, because I've seen it with some of our clients, and there's only a few examples where I can see that they've been able to compete with. For example, Polygon hired the CEO of YouTube. Polygon, you can debate where they are today, but in our case, we helped Solana Foundation find quants with math PhDs from the top universities, and some of them, they wanted to compete them away from Citadel and Bridgewater. Now, they were able to do this because the brand name of Solana is strong enough, and number two, they were able to pay the salaries that these really super scarce talent in the world, these quants, that you can compete with. And I think there's a third leg, right? Because not everyone can have that brand name and that level of capital, but there's the mission. And especially for earlier startups, you want missionaries at your company. You want them to drink the Kool-Aid with you and buy into your vision. And that talent, I think, it can be very high quality, but that's when you need to go on the ground in universities and scout it and treat it as, a proper mission of finding people that believe not in speculation, not in I'm going to get rich quick, not in all of that stuff, but like, hey, blockchain is a way to provide financial freedom and independence for the world. It's a way to disrupt data monopolies of today and how we're being extracted and exploited for our data, or how there's all these unbanked people. So you want to find, I think the way that we compete to get that top tier talent is to find missionaries. And there's plenty of people out there that are looking for the intellectual challenge, and that they're not just in it for the money, they're not just in it for crypto, right? And then the last thing I would say is the challenge to add for what you were saying, Vugar, is for a long time, crypto has had a bad reputation. And that was also a big obstacle to attract the top talent. But now this has changed. The geopolitical stance on this, and the political climate and the perception of crypto and blockchain as an industry has changed. Thanks to institutional adoptions, thanks to the US regulatory environment. And we need to take advantage to this new slate of reputation that we have to attract this top talent. And there's many of advantages that us as an industry need to sell to this audience, right? Which is, guys, you're going to be pioneering with something exciting. You're going to be commanding a higher salary on average, because depending on your role, because there's such a scarcity of talent. Once you develop these skills, you're going to be very, very like a highly valuable asset in the space, and very attractive and very hireable. So you're actually bringing career security to yourself. And so there's all these benefits to building and being a builder in Web3. That's some points to add there on what Ruger was saying.
I really like it. Thanks, Ignacio. And I think that's actually a nice little segue.
I loved how Ignacio mentioned very important point. It's very important, and it's very nice that yes, with the new legislation and new institutional adoption, we are seeing a lot of positive sentiment about Web3 market it as a job place. But also let's not forget that now all these large institutions from Goldman Sachs to BlackRock and almost all major banks will be running after and trying to hire Web3 native, and probably we will see more brain drain of the talent that's been working in exchanges and in crypto ventures and blockchain companies for last, I don't know, 2 3 bull and bear markets. They'll be definitely going and there will be a lot of also like a brain kind of migration, and that will become or that will make a Web3 job space or talent who have Web3 knowledge very scarce and very sought after. And that's kind of my prediction for the next 2 3 years. They will be kind of a Web3 talent bull run.
The brain, it's so funny, isn't it? So many things in Web3 are kind of based around scarcity. And now we're seeing gamification dynamics that happen around talent. And I agree. I feel like as this opens up, we've had the AI wave, but there's going to be a whole new wave of talent that's needed. And if some companies want to go around with $100 million a year checkbooks, amazing. I'll be putting my hand up for that one. Sorry, Ignacio, but I will. But let's go next to Louis. I think you're in a great position, Louis, in terms of you've got a lot of exposure to companies through the VC world that you're in, but also with Nozomi as well. What do you see on the front line? And also in terms of anything from the report as well, that kind of would take your attention. And please introduce yourself as well.
My name's Louis, one of the co-founders of Nozomi. Essentially what we're building is a founder hub for all things Web3 entrepreneurship at any stage. So provide 3 core things. So resources, playbooks for founders, whether they need to figure out how to do fundraising, how to hire, how to do playbooks on whatever, kind of like the YC library. We're building that out. Completely open source, always for free, built by the best of the industry. Second, obviously all founders need funding, ton of the VCs in the space, a ton of the ecosystems, get a ton of deal flow there, and then just partnered up with Legion as well, so we can help founders do compliant ICOs. We just recently did one with 10 Protocol. And then last one is network. So we pretty much know who's who, from ecosystems to agencies to hiring like yourself, Paul, at Bondex. So whenever a founder needs anything from TGE, exchanges and stuff like that, they should always be like, sweet, Nozomi probably knows them. Let me get it hooked up. So that's all we do at Nozomi. So we do get pretty good insight from across most stages of the founder journey, from super startups for that VC portfolios to all the way to the multi-billion-dollar ecosystems from like Aptos and Immutable and stuff like that. Probably the key insight I'd probably put in the report as well. No matter which company you're at, you're still a startup. Like Immutable, obviously multi-billion, Aptos, even Ethereum, every 2 months, the company changes, right? Like even Ethereum, it's gone for 10 years. The product is still not finished. So it doesn't matter which company you're at within Web3, It is super high paced. Every single, whether you're the founder or the employee, you need to have a ridiculous amount of grit, a ridiculous amount of perseverance to be like, holy crap, every single day is changing. So it's always startup mode. That's one. And then obviously dramatically changes depending on what the role. Like if you're part of the strategy team, the CMO, the marketing, it is fires left, right, and center. And then funnily enough, engineers are notoriously known in like Web2 as like, holy crap, it's always on fire. They actually have a much more mellow job compared to a lot of the other sectors in Web3. So I think that's probably the core principle I always kind of take when I'm advising anyone that's coming into the space or in the space. I don't care what role you're in. I don't care if it's a multi-billion-dollar treasury fund or whatever it is. Be ready for every 2 months is going to be a reorg. So put your hat on. And as long as you've got that, the upskilling potential in Web3, because everything is a scale up, you can start as like the janitor and then like 3 months later, you could work your way straight up. And I think a lot of the growth leaders from like 2022, 2023, they were literally just like junior community managers that went from community manager to CMO in the space of like 6 months. On one hand, insanely fire to the hose. On the second hand, if you can survive that, the career potential is incredible.
That part of what I'm saying, that like as an industry and the people that are we're hiring managers right all at the companies that we run, like hiring people, that's one of the biggest selling points is like, hey guys, I worked in banking, and I think in banking, if you joined in the 80s or 90s, right, pre-financial crisis, you could climb up the ranks pretty fast if you were talented. That type of meritocratic attitude is no longer present in most industries, and especially large corporates, right? And so in Web3 presents you with an opportunity to become a domain expert on something where there's a scarce supply of talent. Therefore, you can climb the ladder faster, and then you become a really attractive asset in the labor market that then you can capitalize on. So that's one of the biggest sells. It's not easy, right? It's going to be painful. It's a journey. You need to be adaptable. You need to have grit. But if you get through it, you're going to be basically just a sexy accent in the labor market.
Really good. And shout out to Nozomi as well for those playbooks. As someone who loves a good playbook, I will hand on heart say they are the best playbooks I've ever read when it comes to Web3 marketing. So if you can get your hands on them, please go and have a look. I think they're phenomenal. So great job on those, Louis. Really good. Yeah.
I was actually just pulled them to do a V2, so stay tuned for that.
Oh, delightful. Delightful. I'd love that now to hear from Igor. Igor, you're from Hype. I'd love you to give a little bit of background, but even more, if you could maybe speak into, what you're seeing on the front line right now. You're speaking to candidates every single day in Web3. What are some of the things that resonated from the report from your side? Would love to know, a bit about what you're working on as well.
Hey, hello. So thank you so much for having me on here. It's my first talk on X Spaces. So very excited about it. Yeah, my name is Igor. I'm one of the directors at Hype Talent. We are an arm of Hype Agency, if some of you guys might have heard of it. Basically a super agency based in Web3. We really focus on sourcing the top talent for a lot of clients in the space. We work with a ton of small startups. We work with a lot of big clients who have been in the space for a while and some that have just joined. And yeah, most of the time, like you mentioned, Paul, we're sort of on the front line, speaking to candidates, speaking to clients, learning what's hot right now, companies are looking for. And yeah, it's very interesting. I've been with the company for the last 3 years, and it's crazy to see how much it has changed in such a short amount of time. I always say, like 1 year in Web3 is equivalent to probably like 3 years in the normal space, because the technology, the companies are moving so quickly. There's so much stuff going on. It really passes you by if you blink. And recently, honestly, in the past maybe 5-6 months, there's been a huge influx of positions specifically focusing on bringing sort of limelight to projects and to companies. Marketing roles, community positions, DevRel roles, roles which really try to bring more people into the communities, into the ecosystems, and like I said, shine a little bit more of a limelight on them. The engineering roles, they're never going to end. There's always going to be new protocols, new projects that come out that need skilled senior developers to work on them. But yeah, recently there's been a lot of roles coming in that sort of are trying to find someone to spread the word of what protocols are doing, get more interest into them, more people behind them, and kind of get them involved a bit more in the space. And yeah, the report is really great. I'm a bit of a nerd for graphs, so I spent a bit of time poring over it, and it's really cool. I'm really interested in the fact that the data is showing the fact that the the jobs are focusing more on being in office now. I'm also a big advocate of remote working. It's kind of how I've been working for the last couple of years. I understand that as projects mature and change, the need for people to be in the office, it probably is realistic that, it's maybe sometimes a little bit more helpful to have someone face to face with you and be able to discuss issues directly there and then. But with the amount of talent globally, all over the world of, again, developers, marketers, community people, there's so many people out there, and, not everyone has the opportunity to move, to relocate, to travel to work, wherever that is. So I think it's such an important aspect of Web3 specifically. I don't think it is necessarily going to go away. I think they definitely might lessen the roles that are fully remote. We have clients that have recently started shifting a bit more into office work, offering benefits, relocation packages, visas. But I think a lot of it could also be skewed to the fact that because the Web3 space has grown in such a quick time, there's probably a lot more companies that are starting up now. And whether they are based out of, let's say, California or New York, where there's a lot more opportunity there and a lot more talent, and maybe those specific companies might want to have in-house teams, it could just be a skew of that, because I know that there's still a lot of companies out there who primarily focus on hiring remotely. But yeah, very interested in diving into it. And again, thank you for having me on it.
I love it. And Igor, it's an absolute honor to have your first spaces with us. So thank you. Fantastic that. And I really agree with you what you said as well around there's a lot of now signals of maturity coming in the market. We saw that as well. One of the insights that we're seeing a lot more project managers kind of start popping up, which is a really strong signal saying there's a lot more going on. We need people to kind of herd the cats, as it were. And again, that might be one of those reasons we're seeing that remote work kind of slowly kind of come down. I'd actually love to hear we've got Nanak here from Holonym. And Nanak, we are big fans of what you guys are building. We've actually integrated a human passport into the Bondex app to help people kind of prove their proof of humanhood. And what you're building is fantastic. You're really on the forefront with a lot of devs as well. Would love you to kind of give it a bit of an overview of what you're working on, but also maybe your kind of take on the state of play right now and maybe some of the things that resonated with you from the report.
Yeah, so I think the state right now is very much determined by the market, and especially for smart companies. So one other thing too is the priority for seniority is very interesting, in my experience, because as a company is smaller, we actually find they want to hire more junior devs. With a larger company, the senior source teams, so you do want expertise for building a stable product, but actually the energy that that's a junior developer is really powerful. So I underestimate how junior dev applications is the most important. Is definitely Web2 experience. Almost I won't say it's a deal breaker not to have that for a different company, but it's it almost is, and I can get applied to most Web3 company. But generally, what we look for in developers are lots of motivation, lots of passion, lots of natural curiosity for how technology works, and I think that's what draws the best developers in Web3 rather than the financial senses. So yeah, we really look for very smart and passionate and driven, but also not necessarily senior developers. And that also he's more amenable to remote work. So I think when somebody's naturally motivated, you don't have to worry about are they actually working remotely, and you can just manage them very easily because they're very self-motivated. They can often choose their own tasks if they're working on something that excites them. And it makes it very easy for remote work.
So true. Really agree. Thank you, Nanak. I'd love to now actually hear from Kyle. So Kyle, maybe just give you a quick introduction to who you are, what you're working on, but also you're one of the co-authors on the report, and it was your data wrangling on this. Please let us under the hood and maybe just sprinkle a bit of data insights onto kind of some of the things you found along the way as you were kind of building this report.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. So my name is Kyle Burke. I lead data and AI at Bondex. It was a fun challenge putting this report together along with my colleague, Joseph, too, who also did a lot of the data work on this. So as we mentioned before, we're pulling 1,000 jobs together, thousands of applications, hundreds of thousands of applications in order to try and mine some insights that can be useful to everyone. I got my start in the Web3 space at Consensus in 2017, which was a very interesting place to get the boots on the ground and learn about the Web3 space. Crypto was still somewhat nascent at that point, felt like the wild, wild west. There were two big takeaways that I had from that sort of experience that I think there's bits and pieces that we can still see in the report here. And because the space was so nascent, many of the people who came to work at that company were often innately, intensely curious, very motivated by principles, not necessarily by the money. They were there because they were curious. They wanted to work on something. Maybe they built a concept of it. It caught the eye of someone in the space, and then they eventually ended up at consensus. So that was kind of like part one, the environment being very interesting, people being, as Nanook just mentioned, I think his name, that they were very internally motivated instead of externally motivated. And then the second thing is like Web3 innately has this huge barrier to entry, or at least seemingly barrier to entry, because there's a lot of technical jargon. There's a lot of memes that get thrown around. There's a lot of concepts that are foreign if you haven't been exposed to them before. So looking at this report, we see that there is a ton of jobs for senior level roles, expert in leadership, and a good amount for mid-level as well. But I think to build on what Vugar was mentioning before, like there is plenty of opportunity for people who maybe fresh out of college or more junior. And because we look at things often in the workspace as like, well, how many years of experience do you have? And we consider years of experience, how many years you've held a type of job. Not like that doesn't always apply in Web3, right? Like there's many ways to get experience and exposure to the space without necessarily being paid for your work. Of course, like internships exist, but also there's a lot of opportunities like joining hackathons, joining a DAO, writing blogs about the new technology that's out, joining spaces like these. There's a lot of ways to upskill and show your expertise outside of just, oh, hey, here's where I worked previously. I think in Web3, it's really the exposure that matters, because the amount of time that you've had exposed to crypto networks, to the jargon, to the different technology that's out there, the more context you have in terms of what your company is working on or what partners are working on, or, as one of the famous quotes says, where the puck is moving in the Web3 space. So there's a lot of truth behind some of the things that we found, like the most common skill set that we found, even among senior level roles, is communication. How well can you communicate that you have exposure to Web3, that you've played around with the technology, that you are self-motivated and interested in the space? A lot of those things matter. It's across seniority level, across your job role type, especially if we're talking about remote work. It's incredibly important to be able to communicate in a remote work environment. Like as the number of individuals in your company increases, you have more nodes in the network, more connections per person. That's important to maintain in order to maintain a healthy work environment. Yeah, I hope that just speaks to, some of the people who are looking to break into the Web3 space. There's plenty of opportunity to do so. And it doesn't solely exist in, have you worked in Web3 before?
Kyle, I'd love to keep you up for 1 second, because there's a section on this report that really signaled around AI. We said that 15% of job roles now kind of mention the requirement of AI, and whether that's as the use of things like Cursor, Windsurf, or Copilot, or whether it's using like Claude GPT, any of these types of usual LLMs. I just shared a video earlier with our CTO. I'll share it to yourself, talking about how they did a study. It was from Stanford University, and they recognized that AI does increase these huge improvements in productivity, but it also creates a whole heap of work as well, extra work. And so the productivity gains, you get this kind of technical debt as well, this overhang that reduces the productivity. So your net gain is kind of like half of what you feel it is. So there's often a feeling with AI that it's really helping people be more productive. But in some roles, it's kind of like, especially in dev work, it can be kind of masked a bit by some of the technical debt that's created, or some of the extra code that's created. As someone who's in the space with AI and seeing this increase, I'd love you to maybe just speak to that. What do you think around this increasing requests from companies to make sure that their engineers, their marketers, their team are kind of augmented with AI? What are the pros and cons that you see in that? And again, opening this to any of the speakers as well. Would love people to kind of chime in on this, because it's a huge topic for everyone at the moment.
Yeah. I think it's a super interesting topic. That makes me think of another kind of timeless phrase of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? As much that we're gaining from that experience, there's also negative consequences or externalities that are an effect of having these tools at your exposure. And to build on the other quote that I used earlier, like, go where the puck is moving. Certainly the puck is moving towards everyone understanding AI tools and how to apply them in the right space. I think we've all had experiences, or at least we all should have had experiences at this point, with the amount of value that AI tools, whether coding or large language models or just machine learning models in general, can add to workflows or product features or anything else. So of course, having, similar to what I was talking about before, having domain experience in Web3 is incredibly important to step into that work environment. Having domain experience with AI, I think, is going to be increasingly important in the workspace in general. Now, I think one of the things that I have experienced, being more boots on the ground, building my own proof of concepts or, RAG pipelines or AI agents, it's very easy to build things in a proof of concept manner, and it is very difficult to deliver high quality production grade applications or tools for yourself or an organization. It's especially difficult at an organization because usually there's more requirements, less degree of freedom or fault tolerance that's allowed in those type of systems. So being able to deploy them at a production level scale usually requires a bunch of additional work that goes along to it. And so you can see the productivity gains when you release the proof of concept and you have it in a perfect simulated environment where you see everything working. But then when you release the thing into the real world and you have real users that are using it, or you have people that are trying to, or maybe adversarial to the system, trying to test the limits of what it's capable of, you then realize you need to put in a lot more time and effort in order to get the thing ready to where it needs to be. So that's been my experience thus far with AI. I'd love to hear if anyone else wants to share their personal experience.
Yeah, let's open it up. Anybody just want to unmute themselves and jump in on that?
Yeah, I think I love that quote. I forgot who it's by. I think it's super cliche by now. But AI at this stage isn't going to replace you, but the person that leverages AI is definitely going to replace you. And I think what you were speaking to before, it's when you become a master of something and you use AI, you realize, okay, it's actually not giving you the perfect result. So what I really see is like people that aren't, like, let's say it's marketing or like doing a comms doc or like a new campaign or something like that. Someone super junior in the role would use AI and it would spit out something that looks pretty good on the surface. But then as an expert marketer, you would look at it and it's like, wait, you are missing some fundamental kind of stuff that you can't really see from 30,000 foot view. So it's from production grade level. That's what I kind of see as well. It's like, it's awesome for proof of concepts and for people that really understand their craft. It's an incredible aid and will cut down your hours from like maybe 20 hours to like 1 hour. So obviously for Nozomi, we've got a ton of analysts. We've got a DD process to analyze a ton of deals, right? Normally that would take 30 hours each one. But now with our process using AI, cut it down to like 45 minutes at the most. And I can take that AI process and give it to someone completely new. They would use it and get a solid enough response, but you still need that human right at the end to actually fine tune the prompts and stuff like that. So I think I'll always go back to, at this stage, at some stage, it will definitely replace even the masters. At this stage, if you're just banking on AI right now, you're going to get screwed and you're going to get found out really, really quickly. But if it's something you augment your actual workflow for, it's an absolute 10x.
Really agree. I think that there's a challenge in here as well. My algorithm is full of, you have to be all in on AI. I spoke to one of my friends is the head of marketing at one of the largest supermarkets in the UK 6 months ago. She'd never heard, and I kid you not, of ChatGPT, and it blew my mind. Like, it just totally blew my mind, and that she'd never even heard of it. I wasn't even using it. Actually, more like a year ago, to be fair to her. But now, like, looking at how the processes that we're building out, like I've got MCPs running, I'm using Claude, mixing with all these different things to try and help. And I think there's this challenge now is looking at to like people coming into the workforce of like, how augmented do you need to be? How upskilled in these tools need to be? If Louis, someone's joining your company and they just use Google Drive and that's it. Is there like now this big educational gap you need to kind of bring them on? I guess that's what I'd love to kind of understand from the speakers here is what's now the expectation of people coming into your work and into your team? Is it that, yeah, of course, you've got some good understanding of prompt engineering, even better if it's like a little bit of MCPs or whatever? Or is it like, no, we're fine as it is, just we've got our own tooling and you'll just use that?
I think one of the core things, at least from a philosophy we have at Nozomi, and obviously we work with a lot of like founders, startups, and everything like that. It's always, as I kind of said, very, very high paced. So one of the mandates I always give either new employees for us is you need to be able to replace yourself in 3 months. So I don't care if it's you need to create an SOP or whatever you're currently doing, you need to figure out a way to essentially replace yourself, hire someone else, or just completely replace whatever function you're doing one way or another. Because at least at Nozomi, it's infinite upscale. I don't care where you are, you can essentially become one of the founders within like 6 months if you want, if based on merit. So one mandate I always say, all right, you're in, this is what your role is right now. Within 3 months, completely replace yourself. A lot of the time, they'll figure out a way using AI to be like, sweet, my 40 hours is now like 2 hours. Sweet, give you the extra pay bump because now I've just like 40x my productivity. So based on what I've seen, generally it used to be, hey, I'm going to help Louis hire the next person to replace me. Now it's sweet, I don't even have to hire someone anymore. We're going to replace this whole function with mostly AI because that person has created the SOP, they fine-tuned the model and then done it. And now they only have to maintain that model for 2 hours and then they just move on to the next role at Nozomi, I guess. Love it. I don't know if that answers your question. Like,
Yeah, no, I love it. And I feel like there's this personal tooling that people need to do, but also there's the company side of tooling as well, which is really important. We have got around about 5 minutes left of this space, and I just want to make sure that we hear from everyone. Ignacio, were you about to share something there as well?
No, it's just something super quick about how important it is to everyone's talking about AI, but you need to use AI. Doesn't mean you need to know what an LLM is, but go play around with the different offerings that there are, how to optimize your workflows. To me, I find it that it makes me 30% more productive. I don't think I'm at the substitution of an employee yet. However, I'm sure that through the automation mechanisms that we're implementing at the company, it will maybe prevent us from needing to do some hires. But I do see us also having to hire people to manage actually building some of these AI capabilities into our products and services. So I'm not yet seeing kind of the doom saying, this is going to be a massive disruption of job loss. We've been saying this since the industrial revolution, since the tractors came online, right? But I will say this, the people that did not bother to learn how to use email when it came to the market, they became obsolete really fast in the job market. They tend to be older people that couldn't be bothered to learn about new technology. You don't want to be caught in that same spot. And the future is going to happen a lot faster than the past. And therefore, it is paramount for you to, and it applies to every tool. Actually, every tool takes a little bit of time to get used to using it and implementing it. You need to force yourself a little bit. Habits are hard to break and workflows are hard to change. And therefore, adding things to them, even if it makes them better, takes a little bit of friction at first, but it's well worth the benefit and you don't want to become obsolete. So yeah, just going off of what we were saying there. Guys, this happened. People that learn email, people that get substituted with their AI jobs and they are not adapted to reskill and upskill and other things or look for other careers, they're going to be in trouble. So yeah, always need to be learning, always need to be hungry to learn, always need to be curious, no matter what industry job you're in.
I love it. Okay, I want to wrap this up now. I want to do a really hot take. Basically, I'd love to hear from everyone, super concise piece of advice that you've been given or that you regularly give to someone in the Web3 space to help them advance their career and go forward in their career. So just what's that kind of go-to advice you either have received and it's worked or you've given and you find kind of resonates with people? Just want to go around the room and we'll wrap up there. And Vugar, let's start with yourself and we'll just kind of go across as I see on my screen.
Sure, especially for the young people and new joiners, jumping boats every 2-3 months and trying to, I don't know, double your salary in every jump can seem a very good strategy until it is not. Therefore, I believe if you are not able to produce a good result in a single place, you are just another job hopper. And I think job hopping is one of the biggest issues in the market. And I hope that people understand what they're getting into.
Love it. Ignacio, over to yourself.
A hot take that I have about the current job market, how to adapt to it. I've committed I think we're living in an ADHD kind of world. It's unsustainable. And one of the biggest issues that we have is that in order to be really good at your job, you need to really perfect your craft. And it doesn't mean that you need to be in one career, one job, or one company for a long time. But while you're there, you need to be ruthlessly focused on your craft, on learning as much as possible. And therefore, you want to be really conscious of distractions and being able to get into a state of flow and learn as much as possible and going to school and everyone around you and finding mentors within the company and finding who are the operators in the company that you can learn the most out of. Be super hungry, and then you will never become obsolete, but you're also going to advance your career by 10x. Just be conscious of all the distractions, all those dopamine loops, that all the technology that we use. Take your Wi-Fi off. You don't need to screens all the time. Monotasking, ruthlessly focused, state of flow, stay alert.
Love it. Louis, over to yourself.
I'll kind of use an analogy for this. It's one, always have a founder entrepreneurial grit mindset. So I think a lot for the juniors out there, the analogy I kind of use is, how many times would you try to exit a burning building? And their answer is as many times as possible, right? You just don't give up. I think a lot of people I've talked to just struggle to get into the job market, especially Web3. I can go into a massive story, but I won't. But I've heard stories of no experience and et cetera, the person taking not no for an answer, emailing every single person in the org every single week on LinkedIn and stuff like that with a new thing every single week. And then 6 months later, becoming one of the CMOs of one of the companies. Things happen really quick. Be very, very pig-headed and just don't take no for an answer and just go full blast of it.
I love it. Igor, hope to yourself.
Yeah, there's some really, really great points that have been made by the guys. I think a really big thing, especially if you're trying to break into the space from maybe a Web 2 sort of side, it's really important to get involved, whether it's a community, an ecosystem, someone in the space. I think it's really important to put your name out there and get involved with these companies, these protocols, whether you do just become a community member to then slowly work up to a community moderator. I think someone mentioned this earlier. Communication is such a key part of this space to really show that you are invested in the space and you do know what you're talking about and you are very serious about moving ahead with it, staying updated with the technology, the new tech that's being brought out. Yeah, I think it's very important to put your name out there if you do want to break into it and just get involved, have fun with it. Show the companies, the protocols, the people that you are there for a reason. You're not just kind of floating around to get salary or yeah, you're there for a purpose.
I love it. And Igor, you are a popular man. Your emails are absolutely off the chain there. I can hear the notifications going left, right, and center. Yes, you're a busy man. I love it. Kyle, let's hear from yourself.
Yeah. So I would say this advice caters a little bit more to mid-senior level people in their careers as opposed to the juniors. But some interesting advice that I got early on in my career is that if you don't figure out what you want to work on, someone else will figure it out for you. So I think this is learning that you have self-determination in your life, in the career that you want to have and the things that you want to work on. And as much as you can, be ruthless about protecting your time and focusing on the problems that matter to you.
I think, guys, we're literally on the dot, 3 o'clock UK time here. So it's a perfect time to wrap. I just want to say thank you to all our guests here. They've all contributed as well to the intelligence report, which is obviously out now. Some great insights there. It's just on web3.career. Go have a look. And if you're listening to this space and you're seeing all the speakers up here, drop them a follow. They won't say it, but they do enjoy seeing some new followers come through. Everyone likes that. So really want to thank everyone for joining the space today. It's been really interesting. Thank you for sharing your insights, and we'll have to do another one sometime soon. Thank you so much, guys.